Hello everybody, I didn't want to sound exactly like the Joker at the start of this video, but we live in a society where a large group of people will see players from any sport kneeling down before a match. They're doing that to protest racism and support equality, and those people will respond by saying something like, "As a white man, today I'm oppressed by people slightly bending down for 5 seconds at the start of a football match." It's abhorrent for reasons that are almost impossible to explain conveniently. That's not fair. There are loads of reasons why we hate kneeling. That is true. I have spent the last few weeks talking to hundreds and hundreds of people who oppose footballers kneeling before a match begins, and yes, it is true that there are almost a million reasons why people are offended by the kneeling gesture. Some genuine replies I've got from anti-kneeling people via social media will be worked into this video via me and my dashing colleague who you can see here. Together we will be working to recreate many of the discussions I've had with anti-kneeling people. Are they doing it for genuine reasons, or are they just a bunch of knuckle-dragging, thick as shit racist cunts? Hey! Sorry mate, I'm going to try and give everybody here a relatively balanced approach to the anti-kneeling stance. I'm not going to actually tell everybody out there if those people who oppose kneeling are racist or not. I'm going to allow you to make up your own mind based on the evidence that we present to you today. And believe me, the people who I spoke to in their hundreds and hundreds are more than willing to explain exactly why they hate kneeling. But as you'll soon see, their arguments don't always go according to plan. But does that still necessarily mean that they're racist? I'll tell you what, I'll begin by asking my learned friend the following question. You kind of, judging by your booing, I think you're opposed to people kneeling. Certainly the impression I'm given. So surely booing is a form of the dreaded cancel culture, is it not? Booing means that you want to cancel an anti-racism gesture, which means you must be in favour of the opposite of anti-racism. Does anyone know what that might mean? Oh, very clever, very clever. See what you've done there, but you're wrong, right? All it means is, right, we paid a fortune to watch football, and only football, right? It's our hobby. We watch football and have hobbies to get away from the news for an hour or so. We don't want politics in sport. I don't want politics when I watch a movie or see a play. Now, from your response, I think you're clarifying that you're not a racist, but at the same time, it disgusts you to see anti-racism protests, which I think is the definition of mixed messages right there. Also, your choice of movies and plays, yeah, right, must be very limited due to your demands, seeing as an awful lot of media and entertainment and so forth does involve some kind of political angle. It's basically limiting you to about one trip to the cinema per decade at this rate. Secondly, your argument about you pay money and you don't want to see politics in sport. Here's why we pay a lot of money is a terrible argument, right? So you pay a lot of money to watch sport. That means you're paying money to watch people kneel, right? You're paying money to also boo them, okay? The only way, because they're not going to stop doing that on a whim because a bunch of people, a minority of people, ironically, are saying don't do that. They're booing them. They want them to stop doing that. No, they're not just going to stop doing that because you say so, right? They're going to continue doing that. So the only way you can properly protest that is by taking yourself and your money elsewhere. But that's flawed because there's, especially in football, because a lot of people will be willing, who have enough money to take your place and who can actually handle people bending down for 5 seconds silently. They're going your place. Thus, on just saying that if you were in any way racist, you're then removing yourself from sport, and someone who probably isn't racist is going to come in your place, thus cleaning up the sport. So theoretically, what I'm saying is you, if you're an awful person, will be replaced by better people. Anyway, earlier on, you didn't swear that you weren't a racist. You didn't clarify. Can you just say now that you're not a racist? Of course I'm not racist. Great. Footballers kneel because they also hate racism, just like yourself, right? And by kneeling, they're saying that Black Lives Matter. Do you also think that Black Lives Matter? Of course I think Black Lives Matter, but I don't agree with the kneeling. It's wrong because... Hang on, whoa. You think that Black Lives Matter, but you don't want to kneel to show that fact or watch people kneeling to show that fact. But you still think Black Lives Matter, right? So you should be prepared to say those 3 single words without any worries. So let's give it a go. Say those 3 words, Black Lives Matter. Oh, for fuck's sake, I've already said yes, Black Lives Matter, but the problem I have is with the kneeling, and the reasons are... Stop. You're implying that you believe that Black Lives Matter, but you're not saying 3 words on their own, Black Lives Matter. So pretty please, with cherries on top. Can you please say the following 3 words without any caveats, no asterisks or anything like that? Just say for me, Black Lives Matter. You can't tell me what to do. You're trying to stop us booing and now you want me to say stuff on cue. You can fuck right off. First of all, no one is trying to stop you booing, okay? You have a right to free speech. You have a right to free expression, as do footballers who kneel. So you can boo an anti-racism gesture all you want, right? All I'm saying, and all everyone else is saying, is it looks a bit dodgy when you do that. It's as simple as that, really. So, to counteract that dodginess, can you just clarify the 3 words, Black Lives Matter? Just say those words back to me. No, because Black Lives Matter is anti-white, actually. Saying Black Lives Matter implies I support the Black Lives Matter organisation, and I don't, because Black Lives Matter are violent terrorists, as opposed to like the non-violent terrorists. They're anti-white. You do realise that the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea is not actually a democracy, don't you? Yeah, checkmate, liberal. Oh, come on, mate, it's not hard. Just because something says it's anti-racist does not automatically make it so. Are you honestly trying to tell me that people kneeling down to protest racism are actually kneeling down to promote racism? Like those famous racists like Lewis Hamilton or Kevin De Bruyne, amongst others. That's your argument. That is not what I said. Black Lives Matter promotes violence. They're just a bunch of terrorists. So many people who oppose kneeling have seen the Black Lives Matter protests, especially in America, getting a little bit violent here and there. Lots of looting happening, fights with the police and so forth. But many people who have seen those protests ignore the police brutality that led to those marches and protests, and the police brutality that happened on said marches, combined with well-publicised deaths of black people. One person springs to mind straight away, and hundreds of years of systemic and unrelenting racism that could possibly lead to the levels of anger we've all witnessed that we saw on these marches. And many people condemning the Black Lives Matter marches and protests don't seem to have much of a problem with the fact that white homegrown terrorism is the biggest current threat in America and Britain, and they don't seem to have a lot of problems with the violence, death and terrorism we saw when extremists stormed the Capitol building in January 2021. It's almost as if they want to deflect from all the terrible things white people do and have done and make a different group of, say, non-white people seem like the biggest enemy and the biggest threat. I wonder who that could be. It became clear during my many discussions with the Anti-Kneeling Brigade that they either deliberately or accidentally have confused the Black Lives Matter organisation, represented by this fist, with kneeling, represented by this hand, which just so happens to both contain the message Black Lives Matter, okay? So to a regular, non-racist person, the words Black Lives Matter is not controversial. Seems to be fine to me, but to everybody else, they equate the kneeling with the Black Lives Matter organisation, okay? That's an easy mistake to make, I'll give them that, right? You could definitely argue that there's key flaws there and the bigots take advantage of that, right? Because they both have the same message. And I'll show you some examples of that right now. You cannot get away from the fact that Marxist Black Lives Matter organised protests got violent. And now we're endorsing that violence by kneeling. All the England footballers fully support mass violence and slaughter. Just the other day, Harry Kane talked for an hour and a half about his love of bloodbaths. Or they kneel to protest racism. It's one or the other. Oh, it's a tough one, that, isn't it? Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organisation. Not one player knows a single thing about the Black Lives Matter organisation. Keyword there, organisation. Remember that. Every single player is kneeling to protest racism and promote equality, not Marxism. Okay? The lengths you guys go to pretend otherwise is both hilarious and then eventually depressing, because you really do believe this shit. Anyway, can you please excuse me for a second, because Harry Kane is about to give a lecture about the proletariat. I'll be right back. You what, mate? Dude, it was a joke. Anyway, I must apologise at this point, because it turns out that you're absolutely right. Harry Kane knows everything about Karl Marx. Jordan Pickford's middle name is Stalin, and Jack Grealish, the millionaire, actually hates capitalism. Who knew? And football fans figured all that out because England players kneeled down. You guys are so clever. By the way, none of you will get any of those jokes. They won't make any sense to you. What the fuck are you talking about, right? The players are supporting the Marxism message. We don't boo when they're playing, so just get over it, yeah? Look, I told you wouldn't understand the jokes. I'll explain why exactly in a second. But first, it's got to hurt all of the anti-kneeling brigade that in England's first match against Croatia, Tyrone Mings, Raheem Sterling and prominent BLM supporter Calvin Phillips were England's 3 best players alongside Phil Foden, arguably. Why are you making this about race? We don't oppose kneeling because they're black. It's because of the links to the Marxist Black Lives Matter organisation. How many fucking times do I have to tell you? Oh, hang on a second. I didn't mention a single thing about race there, did I? Just so happened that 3 out of those 4 people were black, right? And then your brain did all the rest of the thinking there, didn't it? Listen to the last sentence again and see if you can spot the 3-letter acronym. That's really important here, okay?
Tyrone Mings, Raheem Sterling and
prominent BLM supporter
Calvin Phillips.
What I'm suggesting there is a Marxist, Calvin Phillips, crossed the ball to another Marxist, Raheem Sterling, who scored a goal, and therefore Marxism won the game for England. This should annoy you greatly, but you're not consistent with your arguments as you only boo the supposed Marxism when they kneel, don't you? Surely you should be opposing Marxism for the entire match. Surely you should be booing for 90 minutes straight. If you truly loved your country, you'll be booing the national team for 90 minutes straight. No, I'm not saying the players are Marxist, conveniently. I'm saying they're simply promoting Marxism by kneeling. So you're honestly telling me that a bunch of millionaire footballers support an ideology that will force them to share their wealth equally amongst all people? An idea that actually benefits both you and me, right? Why wouldn't you want that? What the fuck are you going on about? Look, I'm suggesting that people who hate the Black Lives Matter organisation because it's, quote, Marxist, don't actually know what Marxism is. Do you know what Marxism is? Of course I do. It's, without Googling it, don't worry, I don't really understand it fully either. I just admit to you right now that I really only understand the basics of Marxism because some of the things I believe in, not all, but some, are left-wing. So to you guys, that makes me far left. And because some of the things I believe in, not all, but some, are left-wing, that makes me, to you guys, a communist and a Marxist. But the truth is, I know fuck all about either of those things, especially communism. I couldn't tell you fucking anything about that. I find it ironic that you guys used to complain non-stop about being labelled as Nazis at any given point, but are now calling everything you disagree with as Marxist. Even more laughable is that you guys don't even know a thing about the ideology that you supposedly hate. Oh, one second. I'm just getting team news in now. Breaking news, introducing England's best new player. He went to school in Frankfurt and is best down the left wing. He always plays for a draw, so everything is shared equally. Known affectionately as Manifesto by his teammates, it's Karl Marx. I don't get it. Anyway, footballers are thick as shit. They don't know why they're kneeling. They're not Marxists. They're just stooges for Marxists. For whom exactly? UEFA? Nike, Adidas, Coca-Cola? Is it Sky Sports because they usually show the Black Lives Matter banner whenever footballers were playing? Is it you think they're stooges for Sky Sports, don't you? You think that Sky wants to share the wealth from its worldwide Premier League contracts with the proletariat, don't you? Fool! An act that is directly linked to a hate-filled political movement has no place in football. Clear enough, or do you prefer pictures? Have you just compared the anti-racism kneeling gesture to the pro-racism Nazis? Are you fucking serious? It's political. Do you know what? For the first time ever, we're in agreement. It is somewhat political to kneel against racism. And if kneeling is, by your standards, not allowed, then wearing a poppy should be banned too, right? What about Muhammad Ali? To many, he's considered the greatest ever, but to you, is he considered an utter cunt for refusing to take part in the Vietnam War and then talking about that? Black Lives Matter want to defund the police. Do you think that's something worth promoting? Okay, fair enough. Gareth Southgate will not stop going on about defunding the police. It's all he talks about. He won't fucking shut up about it. Also, once again, you're confusing the Black Lives Matter organisation with an anti-racism gesture, aren't you? Probably on purpose by this point. These two things are not the same. Kneeling predates the BLM organisation by 50 odd years, for fuck's sake. Yeah, well, I think kneeling has gone on for long enough and they should stop immediately. What do you mean too long, right? right? It's about one season, maybe a season and a half if you include the American protests too. And the kneeling bit is like less than 10 seconds and they don't even speak. They just kneel. It's literally a peaceful protest, right? Racism has been around forever. Do you think a year and a half worth of kneeling is comparable to that? It's not going to end racism, so kneeling is pointless. No one is ever going to end racism, right? But we've greatly reduced, say, football hooliganism over the years, and a lot of that was racist, right? So we can greatly reduce racism even further. The kneeling bit is just a gesture. Marcus Rashford still gets 70 odd racist messages after every England friendly, and people boo kneeling. Although I'm not making a judgment about that, clearly. But it's not just confined to sports. Players are kneeling in solidarity to the oppressed people across the globe. Yeah, in all walks of life. It doesn't have to be just sport. Football is a huge global stage, and role models like footballers should be anti-racist at the very least. Do you not think? Can't they find a different way to protest? I would support any other form of protest. Honestly, I would. Can't they bring back Kick It Out, for example? Kick racism out of football, as it's fully known, has run for over 2 decades, right? But forms of protest can and do change over time, which is why anti-racism protests, anti-lockdown protests, anti-vax protests, and almost every other type of protest now involves marching. And if you can't march when you're, say, at a football match and want to show your support for those things, what you do is you kneel down silently, hoping that no one gets offended by that. But you never factor in the amount of snowflakes in the stadium. At this stage, people will always talk about Millwall, right? They say, well, hang on a second, Millwall players stood up last time for Black Lives Matter, and no one booed there. You're actually using Millwall as an example of anti-racism. Are you fucking serious? I don't have time to talk about the decades worth of racism that came out of that football club and the reputation it's got, and the fact that the reason why they stood up and there was silence, no booing in fact this time around, is because the time before that when they knelt down live on TV, I think the players were resoundingly booed by all the home fans. It was a bit of a national scandal, if anything. The club was so embarrassed about this, but they knew that football fans, because they're not the brightest, right, if they just changed it slightly but still protested racism and just asked them really kindly not to embarrass them on the world stage again, lo and behold they did, right? But that argument is rubbish. Oh, they can just stand up instead of kneeling down. Because why can't they kneel down? It's just a slightly different form of being in front of you, isn't it? You know, and also the standing thing doesn't work, right? Because let's take the NFL, for example. People have been standing and or kneeling before every game across the league for about 2 seasons now. And they've been resoundingly booed by some fans no matter what they do, okay? A very good example of that is the start of the season, recent season, the Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs and their star player, their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, tried to organise a standing-based protest, I think with a banner, and they got roundly booed on their first home game by their own fans. The point I'm making is I believe, and many other people believe, there is not an acceptable method of protesting racism to certain members of society, the same people who boo players kneeling. The point I'm making over and over again in this video is that some people will use literally any reason to excuse their hatred and bigotry. But that's just my opinion, right? I'm sure you can make your own mind up whether people who boo kneeling are or are not racist. That just leaves me to sign off by saying thank you for watching Anti-Social Media, a channel that predominantly exposes the flaws in right-wing arguments and takes a piss out of awful people. And just to let you know, there are a couple of videos available, the latest ones that are centered around the launch of GB News. First of all, I look at one of the most embarrassing segments they have called, and I'm not making this up, Woke Watch. I completely eviscerate that segment with Andrew Doyle and Andrew Neil. And I also have a video that contains 5 reasons why GB News fans should be shitting their pants right now. Including one of the reasons is the advertising boycott, which I predicted before the channel was even launched. So in many ways, I'm a visionary. So check that out by going to the description box below and clicking a link, or they'll be flashing up on your screen at the end of this video. Now, before I go, and a lot of people don't watch to the end before making a comment, but unfortunately you will have to, because there is a bit of information, some rules unfortunately you have to follow, okay? My channel, I try and make the comment section a far right free zone, okay? I do not allow just pure hatred and promotion of propaganda, okay? And God bless you, Gammon, right? You love being angry about everything. You'll just flock over to this video to scream at it, right? If you're there wanting to repeat some of the points I've made, even though they've been debunked, then you won't have your comment approved, because many people don't realize this. But as a content creator, or whatever we're called, we have the right to see all the comments come in and approve the ones that are acceptable for public viewing, okay? And far-right propaganda is not acceptable for public viewing in my eyes, okay? If you have anything to add to the points I've made, then maybe, if it's not filled with bile and just hatred, your comment will be approved and we can have a discussion about that, as can the people who visit my comment section. They can also have a discussion with you. If you're just here because you haven't got an argument, right, you're one of those debate me guys, but you haven't got anything, so all you hear is, so you're only here to call me fat or ugly or retarded or stupid or something like that. If you're just here for insults, those comments, surprise, surprise, won't get approved, right? So a lot of people in the last video got a bit of traction, went sort of semi-minimal amount of viral, to the fact that it got a lot of sort of conservative people watching. They kept calling me names, and then they came back a few days later and said, why isn't my comment that's calling you a fat cunt, why wasn't that approved? How come I don't have free speech? Well, I've just explained why, okay? So those are the rules, whether you like it or not. I don't give a shit if you don't like that. I don't care. Last thing is, this is a small channel with less than 4,000 subscribers, so if you like this video, please share it on social media so it gets a bit more traction, and do like and subscribe and all the rest of the stuff. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Do check out these videos that are on your screen right now, and latest betas. Bye bye. You what, mate?